Hello and welcome back to the Skillist Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Salon. Joining me today is my co-host, Matthew Bartholomew Corradino.
That's me. I live in St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. Should I go lower? Is that even better?
Whew, man, I don't think I could do that for a whole entire podcast episode. Not sure people could listen to me. Not that there's hardly anybody listening anyway. But, I was just kidding. All those cool people who actually do listen, just keep listening. It's great. Do it. Oh, so Brad, I got a question for you. Why the hell do you spend all this time working on primitive skills, man? What is your reasoning? ¿Por qué? Is it so you could grow that luxurious beard and then have like good style reasons for it?
I have a scraggly beard. It's so interesting, I guess, that like how much my perspective has changed on why to do it. I definitely started with the to survive in the woods by myself because I hated everybody sort of mentality.
And now is to teach other people to go out in the woods even though you still hate everybody?
Not saying hate, really. No, but I mean, it was definitely like very grandiose. Everyone's got it wrong. I've got it right. And the world's messed up, so I'm going to hide from it in the woods. Or like, we might need to hide from it in the woods. Things look like they're going badly, and we might need to get away from it all. And I guess I still reserve like a small percent of why I do that. Of like, But I also, I guess, have a more realistic sense of how easy it is to die from like a tooth infection or, some random shit you have no control over. And so I'm a little less like attached to my own survival in that kind of grandiose way where it's like, I would, there's just certain things like if there's nuclear fallout and you can't get away from it, like, what are you going to make a bow drill?
You're just going to end up looking like the three-eyed fish in The Simpsons. Get to grow a third eye right here in your third eye zone. But you'll be all right. It's just, you have extra awareness.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always going to do my best, especially nowadays. I have more reasons to keep alive, but
well, just a few, just a couple more reasons to keep alive.
Yeah, but then I mean, going.
Damn the lag.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I find it interesting to listen to my daughter, and she talks about being appreciative for the earth and appreciative for these skills and thankful for it. And it's funny, part of me, I want to temper her excitement about it, or be the voice for moderation, which is pretty ridiculous, and just let her have her experience with it. But it just makes me think of was I like that? Looking at it through this I can't say that it doesn't still feel pretty grandiose to me. I mean,
I was fucking intolerable, man. I didn't even tolerate having friends who weren't into skills. I was a total asshole, talked about it all the time. My poor family and the friends who made it through that shit. Yeah.
You kept a few of them?
Yeah, no. A couple. No. I definitely some definitely were like, dude, that's not what I...
You know what I find interesting is that I retained most all of those friends to the degree that I would have retained them anyway, because they weren't really necessarily into things that I was into as it is, not that they couldn't go out on a hike in the woods with me or something like that, but it was anyway, I retained a lot of those friends, although I was a total a-hole, not a total a-hole, but pretty far along on the a-hole path to them. But it's funny because a lot of the people that I alienated ended up being people who were really into the skills, but they just didn't like the degree to which I was into it or the way in which I interacted with it. I was always looking for somebody to be constantly challenging me, like wanting somebody to, like, if they saw some bird, not tell me what it was, or, give me some clue, or if they knew some plant that I didn't know, like not wanting them to tell me. And so I would do that to them. I think it pissed them off really bad because they were just like, looking to learn something new. And to me, I was like, I'll learn it better if you make it a challenge. So for me, it wasn't like alienating my friends with my excitement about these skills. It was more about like alienating them by the way that I was interacting with them. But yeah, I find it interesting to watch my daughter be so into it. And then, it's like I want to temper that for her to just be like, hey, you're going to be really fucking uncomfortable when we do this survival trip. And like I try to stop myself from doing that. Because it turns out it is uncomfortable for her that first time. And she's like, Daddy, I really love this, but I want to go home. Like, I get it, kid. I totally get it. That's what, like, it's just interesting to see how excited she is. And like, yeah, like recognizing that I was going through that phase at one point and then wanting to like educate her on the things she doesn't know about it, but needing to just back off of that. But I think I find it hard for myself to remember exactly what it is that drew me to being into these skills. I guess I was already into them before I realized that it was. I was like into backpacking and camping and being hardcore in my way, but I didn't even realize that this shit was possible. And when I did see it was possible, I was like, whoa. I don't know. I guess, yeah, it's hard for me to remember specifically what I was looking to get out of it. But I guess I was looking for the same thing you're talking about, like just being able to wander off into the woods with nothing. I guess I had a unrealistic idea of what that would feel like because I didn't realize how long it takes. It takes a really freaking long time to get comfortable. And you don't know so much shit that you would have just known as a matter of course if you grew up with it.
Yeah, and you were going to be dealing with a totally different environment, most likely, like one that hadn't been completely pillaged by, at least one round of colonial farming efforts to just like monocrop all of New England or St. Croix, respectively. Or, wherever the fuck our genes actually come from, was also at one point colonized by some other person who decided that agriculture was the way. But either way, like the situation we're in now, I guess, or looking at what we're growing up with now, it was definitely, I feel like, a long process, and even still is a process to kind of sort out like myth from reality. Like, what is a lack of skill or training or not growing up with it or not having an intact environment? And then what is like just not real, just not a realistic thing that actually gets done, And so, yeah, I think it's really interesting, like, we were looking at this laundry basket over the weekend that was woven out of willow, and Sarah was trying to replicate it, not perfectly, but like build a laundry basket for the family and learn from it as she, like this old laundry basket that we had. And it's just like most people just look at this basket and be like, oh, it's just a wicker basket. You could buy it at like whatever home goods store for a small amount of money. But, every basket is handmade. Like there aren't basket making robots or machines. And so.
Not yet.
Right. I mean, I don't think it's financially. Right. It's financially probably still more efficient to pay people who will accept low wages or are in a condition of having low wages than it is to make a AI robot capable of weaving a basket. But either way, the basket itself and like the time it took to look at it and try and figure out how this person did it and like the absolute excellence of skill and execution of creating a product that was like super tough and durable and effective, but also not like bulky or heavy or extra time consuming to make, and just like trying to really look at the minutia of the decisions that are made by someone who's doing something at like a top grade level, and just imagining a world in which like all of the skill sets are being handed down to you at that level, that's like the baseline, is that everyone is excellent at all of the skills because they've all been mastered and that mastery has been handed down, you know, as opposed to like there being a few people who have mastered shit, you know?
I mean, I always thought that it was kind of like a backwards projection of our modern times to think that people all had a high skill level. But I would definitely say that when it came to the basics, you know, shelter building, fire building, probably tracking, there probably was a hell of a lot of what we would now consider expertise that back in the day would have probably been considered baseline level. And I think that's like part of the challenge in there too. You know, when you were talking about um, when things are tough or when things don't go right, you have that question of, is it because the environment is denuded? Is it because my skill level isn't high enough? Or is it because this isn't actually like a viable skill? Which is funny because, you know, it just shows that broken link in that, you know, in that chain, like the skills handed from one generation to the next at a certain point. And it's funny to think of like at what point, you know, see, he had to figure, so people were sustaining themselves by their own skill and by their own, you know, what they could produce from what was on the land. And it was just like a given that you had to be able to sustain yourself. So you wouldn't necessarily throw away the skill, even if you weren't necessarily going to use it every single day, you still would want to learn it. It's just interesting to think about at what point. I mean, I guess the easy answer is like industrialization. You know, once we got to the Industrial Revolution, like, is that when people were like, ah, fuck it, I don't need to know how to do this anymore. I'll just buy some shit. And it also makes me question that, did people back then look at it the way we tend to a lot of times now, like shit's going to hit the fan at some point, you know, and what it meant the same thing for people 300 years ago, 200 years ago, as it does for us, shit hitting the fan. At least, I mean, I guess at a certain point it didn't really dawn on people that things would crash. But yeah, it just makes me wonder, at what point did people start to say, I don't need that skill anymore. Like, I don't need to learn that. I don't need to pass that on. I find it really interesting when I talk to people. There's a number of students that I've taught who are from Central America, South America, and Central America, the three people that I'm thinking of. And it's like, they're learning these skills because they are really interested in it. And then two of them, were talking to relatives of theirs. Like the one guy was talking about his grandmother, the other person, I can't remember what relation it was, but basically older generation. So, oh, you know, grandma, I learned how to make these baskets. Like, isn't this kind of like what you guys used to do? And then they were like, well, why would you learn that? Why are you trying to go backwards? I just find it like interesting that at how we view the world now, it's like we're looking back over our shoulder and like finding value back over there versus people who maybe grew up having to, you know, struggle a little bit more than we were used to, and their view of it, which is like, why in the world would you ever bother trying to like go back? I just wonder, is that like multiple generations or is that one generation? It really feels like it's one generation. You know, somebody who is just like, I don't need it anymore. The hell with it. Not going to pass on this skill.
Well, right. I mean, I feel like also if you like watch your community and homeland be destroyed and the people who didn't go along with it were like just swallowed up, then maybe you get like the people who survived being colonized are the ones who like, well, like, I guess we better go along with this. I don't really know what that looks like, honestly. That's like that happened to my family, you know, 30 generations or 50 generations or 100 generations ago. but like the connection there, I guess, is like for all of us now, we're all in this world in which it's like clearly the cat's out of the bag that like technology will fuck you up, and everybody's having to like come to grips with having to limit technology in the same way that like even limiting food was never an idea. That wasn't like a thing people had to worry about or think about. Or like essentially limiting medicine. Like alcoholism is easy when you have infinite alcohol, but if you're making all your alcohol in like a clay pot, then there's natural limitations or whatever. So like I think we're having to kind of figure out that it isn't all good. And we're also having to figure out, I think, that like we are maybe not happier overall. And or like what is the line between where like technology serves us and is good and then owns us and makes our lives more miserable. And I don't know, I like, it's easy to romanticize the past and be like, oh, when people were living primitively it was better. And I think, I don't know, I think humans are gonna, it's interesting, like what do people actually tend towards? Like you think about stone tools and we're both like, yeah, they're cooler, but everybody clearly abandoned them for metal as soon as they could. You think about like wool blankets. People got onto wool blankets as soon as, like textiles and shit. Like, I don't know. It's interesting to see, like, if we can clearly see that technology fucks us up, why do we keep tending towards it as a race?
Well, I think there's two different things going on there, right? When there was a couple points I was thinking of as you were saying what you were saying. So first of all, I was thinking about the whole point for me wasn't necessarily to be able to go out into the woods and be skilled. For me, it was more like a mental health piece. It wasn't about like being prepared for an eventual collapse or like being ready to leave it all behind. It was more the mental health aspect of getting away from this kind of like insipid sort of lifestyle that doesn't, where there's not much need and therefore not a lot of meaning in the things that we do. Um, so, um, we when we look in the past and we romanticize about it, it's like I think the part that we romanticize about is like maybe misplaced. Like maybe we're not necessarily thinking about, when I look at the past and I think about how skilled people were to be able to produce all the things that they would need and be able to like make cool stuff. I might romanticize about the making of cool stuff as opposed to romanticizing about how they felt inside and how much like mental health they had and what that might have felt like. Because how can I know, how can I know what that looks like? Whereas that person back in the day who had that mental stability, that like emotional connectedness, groundedness, might be like, yeah, stone tools are cool, but fuck, this knife gets way sharper and it's easier to sharpen. So of course I'm going to go for that knife. And I guess that's why I was asking the question, like, at what point did we start to decide, all right, we don't need this skill anymore, so we're not going to teach this skill anymore? Because, yes, there's the effectiveness aspect. And I guess, it's in our nature to just assume it'll always be that way. As humans, we use those words always and never a whole lot. Like I was listening to somebody talk about, you know, talking about talking about some of the ruins and just saying, oh, well, this has always been here. It's like, no, it's not always been here. And it's really not that many generations removed from when this thing wasn't here. Yeah, so yeah, I guess it's really hard to look back and see within myself, was it like the coolness of the stone tools that I was getting after, that I was romanticizing? Can you hear all the shit that's happening in the background right now?
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah, it
much shit
sounds
happening in the
mayhem,
background
bro.
right now. Yes, it's total mayhem. I know, right? Chickens, children, and the whole the whole like. It's getting me all discombobulated. Yeah, I guess when I think about no, I can't even remember. The hell with it. I said enough about that. It's all it's all went out of my brain. I still think stone tools are cooler.
Well, right. So like the slow progression away from this stuff is interesting in that like trying to figure out what we've traded is kind of a, you know, it's still a question mark to me, I guess. Like clearly people live, like more babies don't die and stuff like that, but at the same time, like, is the aggregate pain in one life less or more, or the aggregate like mental health or fulfillment in one life less or more than it used to be? I would say it's still like up for debate. You know,
well,
in terms of like,
so there's
like, I don't know. I was thinking about today. It was like 50 or 45 and just fucking pissing, just pouring down fucking rain. And we need the rain, but we're out with the kids all day. And so like, you know, we're just like taking a moment, practicing bow drill under the pavilion. And I'm thinking a lot about deer right now. And I'm thinking like, man, those deer are just standing in this shit right now. We're just like laying up under a hemlock tree. And how, like, are they experiencing it as rugged, or are they experiencing it as just like, whatever, it's another Wednesday, happens to be raining, you know?
I think it's rugged as shit for them. But that doesn't mean they care.
Sometimes it is, yeah. But
well, so there is
right,
an important
that's
point
the question I
and
get.
I'm sure and I'm sure a lot of people might like disagree with some of the things that I'm about to say, but I don't really give a shit, is that so first of all, like, okay, so obviously average lifespan must be longer now, but that's an average. There's this way of thinking that people have that like everybody died at 40, and during, especially in the beginning of the Industrial Revolution and in like Middle Ages, when people were being worked to the bone for the sake of somebody else taking a good percentage of what they were making, yes, lifespans were actually like quite low. But a lot of our thoughts about, you know, like people think that people worked their asses off back in the day, but that's actually not true. It's like projecting our modern work habits onto those old times and thinking, man, to produce the same amount of whatever product it is that they're producing without the technology that we have nowadays, like, must have been just god awful amount of work. Well, first of all, people weren't growing things in such massive excess to make profit. Like, of course, the people at a certain point were trying to make profit, but like people weren't killing themselves to make more money, because the viewpoint wasn't about like making as much as you possibly could before you died so that you could pass it on. So it's definitely very true that people project modern work habits onto ancient times. So we're probably projecting a lot of what we assume to be misery onto ancient times. Now, as far as the medical advances, like that's pretty obvious. If you broke your leg back in the day, like you might be saddled with a very serious like injury or like a serious handicap for the rest of your life because, you know, advances in modern medicine. But you know, so long as you were lucky enough to not to fuck yourself up too bad, like there's nothing that says that people couldn't live the same amount of time. It just averages. Obviously you're going to have obvious infant mortality rates were way higher. But, that kind of factors into the average. And the other thing to think about is that there was I don't want to say nobody, but people weren't taking accurate statistics like they do nowadays. So we don't really have a good idea of what the average lifespan was. Sure, we can find, bones and archaeological sites and look at how old they are and the average ages of how old they are, but that doesn't give us an actual accurate picture of the whole population and people's general, health status. And I guess I'm just saying that there's a lot of ignorance involved with it. And so,
I mean, you and I both know
if
you're making a fucking Salutrian laurel leaf, you're not stressed for your survival moment to moment.
Oh no, not at all. I mean, when we went to
fucking
Hawaii,
living it up.
When we went to Hawaii, we went up and we were doing some napping up on top of Mauna Kea, and that was where the Hawaiians. There was a spot up there where the Hawaiians would go to get the basalt to nap, and they would stay up there for a month. And people would bring them food, and they would just make a whole shitload of preforms, like as many preforms as they possibly could in a month. Clearly, people had it a little bit easier than the average person thinks for them to be able to just do nothing but flint nap for a month while people were coming up and feeding them. And then they'd bring those preforms down the mountain and that, have a whole shitload of preforms to make a bunch of axes with. But yeah, it shows that maybe people were like a lot more comfortable than we think of. The other piece is that we're so used to our modern comforts. Like I was just thinking about this the other night. Like a friend of mine hasn't rebuilt any of his shit since the hurricane because he has a space that works for him. And he's like, oh man, I can't get a girl because I don't have a house. It's like, well, why do they need a house? And I was just like, well, I
do I know this friend?
Just you might know. You probably know Waya. You know Waya. He still hasn't rebuilt his shit. He's
that's who I thought
kind of a little bit here and there. So you thought it was?
Yeah, that's
totally good dude. Anyways, like,
Waya's the best. Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. It's nice. It's hard to find a girl in St. Croix who wants to live with no house, but it just makes me think, well, why personally, I'm like, whatever, fuck it. I'll sleep under like a galvanized roof with no walls. I don't give a shit. Like, sure. Put a mosquito net around me. I'm good. And I guess what I'm saying is it's like people's perceptions of it is so skewed that, it must be uncomfortable. And I don't think people, so physically our comfort level in America is pretty high, right? We don't have to deal with all that much discomfort, but like just the amount of time and energy wasted on pointless bullshit is pretty staggering. And just to think about how it feels personally, like to me, when you put in a lot of hard work and then you're done and you have something to show for it, how that feels compared to when you waste most of your day on some pointless bullshit and how that feels at the end of the day. It just makes me think of like when I had a 9-to-5 and come into work on Monday and all these dudes would be pissed off because their favorite football team lost and they'd be all pissed off for like the most of the beginning of the week because their favorite football team. And one guy, I remember one day, this week is going to suck because the Cowboys lost. And I'm like, why exactly is this week going to suck because the Cowboys lost? It's like, it's just pretty crazy the amount of mental and emotional discomfort that we learn to live with on a daily basis.
But do you think, part of me wonders if that's because our lives are supposed to be harder with real things. Like, fuck, I missed that deer, or like, I can't find any more root that I need or whatever. And those are supposed to be like the trials and tribulations. Instead, we've made everything so easy that we have to be like, I can't buy this thing I want.
Maybe, I don't know. I think it's hard to throw around that whole idea of like harder. Is it supposed to be, we're built to endure that hardness. So yeah, I could see it. I can totally see where there is a piece to that point. Like, you imagine,
well, and that's
if you
like,
believe in
why the fuck would
evolution,
why would people pay us for us to take them into the woods and be like, now your life is fucking really hard? If there wasn't like a, you thought it sucked before, you don't even have food, no bed, no couch.
That you still owe me the rest of the money after the deposit, by the way.
Especially like now
What, you
you're going to be
brought coffee?
like,
Hell
now
no, you're not bringing that
now
coffee.
you have to now you have to follow my incredibly skilled monkey children around through the woods as they like scale trees and shear jagged rocks to like
Watch how
collect
much better
food
my
while you
7-year-old
feel
is
like
than
a
you at this
total fucking pasty white bug-eating fucking northern person. Is just like, what's happening to me?
I think it was worth it. Oh,
Yeah.
oh man.
Like,
You know, so
wonder how you do on a mountaintop, Eiley.
she'd be cold. She'd be fucking cold as
Yeah,
shit.
exactly.
It's cold. I'm cold, Daddy. Let's go home where it's hot.
Yeah.
And so, I guess the reason why we're going on this whole tangent gets to me back to like exactly what we're talking about here. Just like, why the fuck would you do this shit? Like, what is it about these skills that has caused me to like fit my entire life around them? And I think it's that, but I couldn't see it. Like, I couldn't, or maybe I was inspired in that way. And there was a part of me,
I was going to say, how
subliminally,
much,
that was like, yeah.
I mean, to me, do you ever have moments where you're like, oh, in another life, I would have done this other profession?
Maybe.
You know, like I could see in another life being like a wildlife photographer or filmmaker. I could see, there's like other weird jobs, or like being just straight up like a biologist, like researcher, where you're like, I just research animals. Like I could have seen myself doing some shit like
something
that.
like that if it wasn't 9/10 of it sitting in a fucking office in a
fucking
lab
computer.
looking at
Yeah, I
data.
know. I know. I just heard an interview with a guy who's like, I became I studied biology in college so that I could get out and follow animals around. And then I was like, oh, maybe if I'm a grad student, I'll get to follow the animals around. And became a grad student. He's like, maybe if I get my doctorate, I'll get to follow the animals around. And he's like, now I'm a professor and I pretty much just like make sure that the undergrads get to go follow the animals around.
Oh shit! Well, yeah. When I was talking with Clay, that's why he stopped. He was a wildlife biologist. He moved out to the mountain states because he wanted to be somewhere more wild, and he was a biologist for the state of Idaho, and then ended up spending first of all, driving back and forth from his place, and then just like sitting in the fucking office at a computer all the time. I'm just like, fuck, this isn't what I wanted to do. Had the knowledge,
right.
Like went to school to get the whole thing, realized sitting in front of the fucking computer, like, well, damn, this isn't the way I want it to be. And I switched it all around. And it's like now having these adventures that people watch him on YouTube, freaking having these hunting adventures, which is, it's so funny thinking about this whole. All right. So I did want to make this point real quick before I go to this other tangent, but like, so was it, I didn't necessarily recognize it as like, oh, this is going to be fulfilling for me. This is going to like address some of these emotional, mental deficits that I see, that I witness in the modern. Hello, who's there? Oh, that was your phone, not even your door. Anyway, I wasn't necessarily thinking that, oh, like, I'm looking for some sort of like mental, emotional stability, and I see that these skills and this type of lifestyle is going to give me that. Right. I didn't necessarily have the broad enough vision to really see it that way. But maybe I was inspired in that way. And there's this balance in there where it was like, okay, so somebody put this forth to me that like, hey, it is kind of fucked up how we put all this time and energy into jobs that we fucking hate most of the time and look forward to the weekend when we can finally do what we want to do. Like, how fucked up is that? Right. And so there was a part of the inspiration that came from outside of me, but then I had to meet that. Right. I had to bring the passion to be like, oh, fuck yeah. Let me learn how to do this shit then. Let me put myself in this uncomfortable situation and see how I do. And let me see how I improve through time to do that. So it's like, yes, why did I do it? Because somebody told me that I should do it and that it'll be really fucking cool. But also didn't realize I was searching for something. And I guess that's why I spent the money to to do it and all the time and all the energy. And now when you're talking about like, oh, what if I was just like a wildlife photographer? It's funny because when you said that, I was like, yeah, but what is the percentage of people who start off being like, I'm going to be a wildlife photographer versus the percentage, what is the percentage of people who start off inspired by it and actually end up making money doing it? Probably a very small percentage of people. But then I also think,
sure,
how many people get into primitive skills and want to sustain themselves with it by teaching it or what have you? And I've been able to do that. So maybe if I had the passion for those other things that I would end up doing that. But man, that sounds kind of nice. Just going and taking pictures and then going home and going to sleep and not having to do all the shit I have to do to make ends meet, teaching these skills. Like doing
those jobs are rugged. You're like no, you get like sent in the middle of nowhere and you're like by yourself in a blind for fucking 3 weeks for zero money. Fucking
man. Yeah.
Trying to get a shot of something and then
there waiting for the one shot.
Yeah.
And then then your employer gets all the money for that cool ass shot. Like
right.
you get
so
to say
I mean, I'm sure it's
your ass off in that little blind.
Right. I'm sure it's cool, but I'm sure it's rugged as hell. But yeah, I think like what's interesting to me is that I used to kind of ring the like it's fulfilling bell, and I think like you can find momentary fulfillment and enjoyment from doing the skills, but I think that's true of like most artistic pursuits. Like if you worked really hard to get good at a song on the guitar, I think you could find like a similar kind of fulfillment. Or like people find a lot of fulfillment in like sports because it's a never-ending growth cycle of skill and challenge and so. But
until you get old at 35.
Well, so I think what's interesting is like after all these years, I personally don't feel like the answer to my mental health or fulfillment is in the skills. I feel like that is like a false thing, and that like getting outside by yourself and like having hands-on skill time and the meditation of working on skills be beneficial to your mental health? Definitely, like no question. But I have not found it to fix my mental health at all, and we know tons of people who are really good at the skills who clearly do not have a high level of mental health. Yeah, so it's like clearly not the answer. It is like could be a part of somebody's answer, but I think most of that is like just doing the mental work to be like, oh, none of this shit matters. I just need to be okay with myself and move on.
Well, but that's a transient thing anyway. That helps. That's going to ebb and flow. But what I do find is that that whole mental, emotional health part about these skills, like for me, I can like reach that level of contentment. I guess that's what we're not talking about happiness. We're talking about contentment here, but like I can find that contentment working on a skill from time to time. But generally speaking, if I'm in a group of people who are working on those skills, it's very easy to find that contentment. It's like, it's quite, it's very fulfilling. It's
but is that the skills or is that the people?
I think it's both. Because I could also sit around, be hanging out with other people and not have that and just have conversation or like, I'll go visit friends. Some of those friends that I didn't totally and completely like push away, I'll go visit them, and it's like, I'm trying to meet them where they're at, and so it's like there's only so much. You're not getting much quality time watching TV or like playing a video game, right? But I haven't had it yet where I'm sitting around working on skill with other people, and I'm like, this is kind of lame. Like for me personally, if yes, I think that it's both, right? It's like that closeness to the skill, and it's like the camaraderie shared with other people, which is definitely absolutely not something that I saw as important to any of this. Like I was reared in this on that myth of the lone survivalist, which, is so easy to buy into. Like it's easy to buy into because our American society kind of pushes that, the self-made person and all that. And again, that's like a projection. Like, well, if I could be a self-made millionaire, that's like the apex of our modern thing. Well, then the self-made survivalist, that's got to be the apex of the survival world. Turns out that's total bullshit. Took me a lot of fucking years to realize, oh, well, it's better when there's other people around, so long as they're not lame as shit. Um, but yeah, so to me, it's part of that fulfillment. It's part of that contentment, but it's not all of that contentment. And maybe there's some other things that I could be doing that could give me that same feeling of contentment, but I haven't personally found them. I mean, sure, surfing, that's great, but it's like the waves don't last forever. And at a certain point, you're just like, all right, I caught 50 of them. I can't even remember 40 of them. I don't know. It's just like there's few things I've personally found that give me that same level of contentment, especially when it's combined with a group of people. It's pretty I almost wanted to use the term magical, but it's really like transporting you to some other realm of existence. Kind of what happens to me. It's like a totally different aspect of life when you really hit on that pretty well. But that wasn't part of how it was taught to me. So it's definitely something that I try to impress on people is that community aspect. Makes it tough when a whole bunch of people think that what you do is just get dirty in the woods and stay bug bitten. Well, this morning,
Yeah,
getting
and it's
bit
funny
my
too.
ass off while hunting, I was like, "Oh god, these fucking bugs! I understand what they're saying."
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny too because the schools that are out there that like have made community the center of it are also kind of missing the mark to me. And then yeah, I think there's an imbalance there, and it's like,
Well, yeah, and that
community is
gets
a
to
funny
back.
one because it's like trying to force a friendship, like it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Like, I'm
but
not going to
then
tell those
but
friends
then
to turn off the TV and make a bow drill kit
well,
because they're not going to do that. I got to pick the right people to do that kind of shit with, and that's where I think what you're talking about comes in, where it's like you can't just focus on community because what if you turns out you don't really like those people? And you've been trying to like have this communal thing be the center where it's like, oh, I don't like any of these motherfuckers.
right. Well, I think to me it comes more to like teamwork. And I find at least like modern students that we're working with, like that concept of what does it mean to be a good teammate? What does it mean to be in a leadership role? What does it mean to have a role and be a part of that? I think one of the things you said before that really rang a bell for me was like the concept of meaning or having meaning in what you do. And what's interesting to me is like there is meaning in what people do outside of, our context of what we find cool. We find meaning in doing what we do. But, some people find a lot of meaning in being a doctor or a nurse or, and some people do have jobs that have no meaning to them, and that definitely sucks. But I think that there is something about the skills that is different from any other hobby or like pursuit. in that, other than maybe like hunting and fishing, that's like very connected to just what our wiring is meant for. Like our senses are meant to be taking in the natural world. And I think like there's like a pleasantness in just the memory between our skin and wood, or skin and stone, or whatever. Like, I think there is a thing there that makes it extra special compared to other stuff, that makes it have like a greater feeling of connection, at least for me. But then at the same time, I kind of wonder, like, if that were true, wouldn't like more people be doing it?
Well, yeah, but we're so overwhelmed with choices in this world. It's really easy to be like, so when you're talking about that meaning piece, it's like, it's so obvious to me that learning how to make a fire by rubbing sticks together carries meaning, because if I sit next to a fire and I'm warmer than I was when it's cold out, like, boom, it's like automatic meaning. I don't need to like make any philosophical leap to give it meaning. It just intrinsically has meaning right there, because it has to do with like keeping us sustained. However, when you could just use a lighter and like click it, sure, then of course you could take that easy way out. But it's like we need that extra layer of meaning in our lives to get people beyond that point. Sometimes when I you know what? Fuck it. I don't give a shit. I think when people are like, what's the point? It's stupid. You could just use a lighter. What my initial reaction to like that is like, you're fucking chicken shit. Like, you're just afraid to do it yourself. You're afraid to fail, and you're afraid to be you're afraid that your life doesn't have any fucking meaning. Fuck it. I don't care. I'm just going to say it. Like, that's how I feel people view it. They're like, well, I don't need to do that. I'm just going to be fine. Oh, I'm just going to take my hot shower. Fuck it. Like, you're just fucking afraid. You're afraid. You're fucking scared to try something different. Right? That's my feeling. I feel like people are like afraid that if they actually did it and they saw how cool it was, then they would realize the rest of their shitty life has no meaning. Oh, really? I went for it right there, didn't I?
Yeah, you're getting so mean.
I am so mean.
Who hurt you? Who hurt you, Matt?
I did. I hurt
do you
me.
Do you need a hug? No, I mean, I get it. I get that. I get that frustration. I think it's funny because I think most people, I don't get the I could just use my lighter comment very often. It's so easy to retort with like, yeah, until it runs out of gas or the flint breaks, and then you can't make another one in the woods, or like you lose it, or it gets saturated with water or whatever. Like, lighters are great. I carry a bunch of them, but it's pretty awesome to have another way of doing things.
It's really interesting to think about that. So, because then you could be like, well, when my lighter runs out, I'll just go buy a new one. It's like, it's crazy to me how people devalue the skills of like self-reliance so often, where if the shit did hit the fan, people would be so fucked. Like,
This is
completely fucked.
This is something that I think is interesting about the skills, at least for how they affected me, is that like I became more competent at doing things for myself generally, and more generally willing to like problem solve or learn like auto mechanics, or how to take apart a dishwasher, or like how different materials, how to work with metal, how to work with, whatever the fuck came up that I needed to do. Having a basis in the skills and having done so much shit where it was like physical, mental, trial and error, make it work sort of thing, like definitely opened the world to, I could probably figure that out, or like at least I can take a look at it and see if it's like beyond my pay grade or not. Like, and I think being generally skilled or like generally competent is a great reason to do the skills, like for for like people to teach them to their kids. Like, even if you're not going to ever use them as an adult, the fact that my kids are going to grow up having like a basis with the idea that they're like hand skilled, any hand skill they ever want to learn for their whole life will be approachable to them, you know.
Much easier than if they didn't grow up with it.
Right. And like, yeah, that type of learning or that type of ability to problem solve and kind of adapt and overcome, like that is a place where I feel like, yeah, that you can just generally be like, this is good for everybody to do this, especially younger in life.
And I've definitely found that, you could make the assumption. Okay, so now I'm not talking about hunting because that's totally different, but you could make the assumption that, like, okay, somebody who's like a carpenter, let's say by trade, would have an easier time with primitive skills because, they're used to using their hands. But I don't find that that's as, starting with the basic hand tools and with basic primitive skills is much easier to like move up the technological chain than it is to move back down the technology chain. You know what I mean? Like, using a circular saw doesn't really tell you shit about how to use a fucking jawbone from a goddamn deer to cut through something, which I've done before. It was really fucking stupid. I was just trying to learn how to do it. But anyway, it's like, it's a if you have it as your base, then it's got more possibility. It opens up more possibility than if your base is like dependent on some technology that you don't really know how to fix. Like we were saying about, like being generally competent. It's like I had a tool break and my buddy took it apart and just was like, oh, it's this right here, and fixed it. And it was like, it was only because he has a basis in primitive skills and was willing at one point to take his shit apart and just look at it and be like, oh, well, this has got to be a problem, and then put it back together. And some people have that natural ability. He didn't necessarily have that as a natural ability. It was only because he spent enough time making shit from nothing, to have the confidence to be like, I'm going to take this thing apart and see if I can fix it. And I think that it helps to have these skills for exactly what you're talking about, even if it's just the confidence of like, well, fuck, I spent 5 nights at freezing ass cold shelter. This isn't going to be so bad. I'm just going to take this thing apart and fix it. What are you looking around at? Are you hearing the same scratchy thing I'm hearing? I thought it was in my earphones. Damn technology.
Yeah, man. I think that's definitely a part of it. Is the like the being generally skilled part. And I think also like it generally teaches you to endure more failure, and to like be humbled. I don't think that everybody who gets good at the skills is humble.
Yeah, thanks.
But I think that you definitely have to learn to listen to the material and to be sensitive to things outside of yourself, to get good at any of the skills. And yeah, like I think I guess like I've kind of come into a new reason to study the skills or to like get good at certain ones, which is like I want to do them with my kids. And I've found that like trying to do things with the kids that you're not good enough with to shepherd them through and lead them to success doesn't build a great relationship for them with it. Like you can get away with a little bullshit when they're really young, especially, but as they get older, like they want functional success to some degree. So you need to be good enough to shepherd them through that and having the successes yourself. And that's like definitely, yeah. And then it's pretty cool to be raising people to do the skills with, because sometimes I'm like, I wish I had easier access to people to do the skills with when I'm not, when classes aren't running. And now I'm like, oh, I'm growing some.
Well, let's just hope they're into what we're into.
I mean, for at least a
which
little while, I
skill
can
we're
make it so
into.
that it's the coolest thing around.
until they're teenagers. Let's just be honest here.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. But, hopefully there's at least a few of the skills that ring a bell for them so that, like, maybe Ash doesn't want to bow hunt with, a primitive bow, but she's, like, happy to take out a compound bow and go hunting, or she's... It'd still be, like, I would still be happy to have someone to get in the truck and drive to a spot with, or, like, whatever.
Yeah, I was thinking
or
about
she
that
just
today
wants
when
to keep going to basketry classes or whatever it is.
I was thinking about that when I was hunting today. My friend was talking about this study that he had looked at, which I think it was in Oregon. And they had like radio collared a bunch of elk, and then like a bunch of them, most of the herd, and then they had given GPSs to hunters who were taking part in the study, like as if in exchange for like being able to hunt that spot. And they had the rifle hunters and they had the bow hunters, and it was some crazy percentage of like the people who were hunting with the rifles. It was like 5 to 10% of the time they were within like 30 to 40 yards bow range, basically, of the elk, as far as not necessarily at the same time, but like, it was only 10% of the time that rifle hunters were in places where elk frequented. And it was like, I can't remember the exact percentage, but it was a huge percentage, like 70 to 80% of the time, the people who were bow hunters were within bow range of where elk frequented. And it's like, that's like man, just that right there. How is that not better reason to start with the primitive skills? If you're talking about people who don't bow hunt, right? They just rifle hunt. But if they started with that basic level and they had to get closer, they'd be way better at it. And then they could take the gun later and do the same shit they did when they were bow hunting, and they'd find far more success. But it's like, and I guess, again, that's like part of the reason why to do this shit is that it's not necessarily just about making it harder. Maybe it is just about making it harder. But, when you do the primitive way, you really have to get close to those animals, or you have to. And the technology is never, if I make the technology myself, then there's absolutely nothing between me and that animal. Whereas if I have to buy the technology and I can't make it myself, there's that piece of technology between me and the animal that I'm trying to hunt. Which, somebody was just saying, oh, I didn't go hunting this year because I don't want to do killing. And I'm like, man, this isn't about killing. Like, sure, it's great when you shoot something. It's awesome to have meat in the freezer, but it's more about like connecting with that animal. At least under these, under the conditions primitives hunting, it's like that. Yeah, it's like that technology is part of me. That bow is part of me. Not just because I made it, but because when I use it, I know every inch of that thing. I know exactly what those problems are with it, how to fix them, how to work with it. Versus if something goes wrong with my gun that I don't understand what it is, it's like, oh shit, well, now I need somebody else. Like there's something between me and that animal.
That is interesting, actually. Like, there's times where I hear about people talking about like, oh man, I just need to get within like 30 to 50 yards of this deer and I can take a shot at it. And I'm like, holy shit.
God damn.
It's so fucking far. It's fucking crazy. But they're talking about, compound bow or hunting. And it's like, that shit's so far to me. The idea of like, shooting at a deer at 50 yards. I'm like, holy fuck, that's crazy. But that's like not uncommon or crazy with a fucking crossbow. Or now, dude, crossbows are legal in Vermont and people are shooting fucking tons of deer with these things. It's like a rifle. It's crazy.
Well,
but anyway,
I go.
The difference in what like that range difference, what that means in terms of just places you can hunt from and like options you have and ways of covering different areas, like it's crazy. But then so it's like, obviously they're way better for killing things. But it is interesting, like I saw an advertisement for a toolkit to carry with you to fix your compound bow, and it was showing like all the different sized bits and pieces you need and things to adjust and like all the shit you have to deal with, and like all these different things that could go wrong with your release and your this and your that. And I'm like, it is kind of nice just to have a fucking super simple thing when it comes time to like actually do the killing part, that it's not like a big to do. There's not, it's like I have a stick and another stick, and one of them's pointy and one of them has a string, and like I'm going to throw an arrow really hard at this thing's chest.
And
yeah,
and it's
I don't know.
easily adjustable. You just scrape it if you need it to be lighter. Okay, you can't really make it stouter, but well, you can cut it down shorter.
The final thing I guess I wanted to bring up as far as like motivation, and I think this is really like I think people like to undervalue what the status in the community that they're in means to them. And I don't mean status in terms of like society, because clearly you and I don't give a fuck about that. If you just take a quick look at us, you'll see like status chasing in the greater American society is not a big deal to me. But I think everybody within their community is seeking the like esteem of others, and that the desire to get better at a skill or to increase a skill can also just be like a getting status in your society. And it doesn't need to be like a Machiavellian or an egotistical driven thing. I think it's a natural drive within humans, because it's like, it's a major deal. And I think like people look for it in different ways. Like they attach themselves to a sports team, and if their sports team loses, they're depressed because they see it as diminishing their status. And if their team wins, then they've joined that team, so it raises their status. And then they get like the right jersey and the right paraphernalia to like show how cool they are within that community. And I think that the primitive skills world definitely has that happening. At least, you know, like I see it, and it's not like there needs to be a pecking order, or it needs to be negative, but I see like people will gain status in certain communities based on their skill level. And I think like if you find the thing that you love to do, and then you can gain status and provide value to a community, that could be like a very fulfilling way of engaging in your life, you know, that like you will get a lot out of that. And it, you know, again, you're not like centering that, but it is a reality that like it is something people desire to be of value and esteemed in a community. And so if this stuff is like rings your bell, then it's a great reason to like, you know, pursue it.
Well, so
you can't do it
I think
for the acceptance of others or whatever, but like, yeah, I don't know.
Well, and I think what makes that point way more valid for as far as like where, you know, this discussion is concerned, is that if you took away the people who are esteeming you for that, you still have fire, you know, like you still have the bow and the arrow, you still have like the meat on the table, right? It has value in and of itself because it can help to sustain you. And then it's you know, if I can gain status by following the right team and having all the cool gear, like that might mean something to people who are in that world. But when you take those people away, there's zero fucking value in that. Like, you know, what team you're following, or, you know, like, yeah. So because the skills have value, like survival value, they don't need that. But when you get that social status raise because of these skills that have value already, it's like added bonus. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, it's funny
I
though,
gain
because it's the
status because I'm
context
good at
where
this.
that the context though is where that's interesting, because in like a certain, situation, it could be better to not have the skills to make a fire in terms of your survival and the ability to like, schmooze or make it through an interview or something is like more of an actual valid survival skill. So it kind of depends on the context, and that's why I could see people valuing things differently. But
yeah, but
I get what you're
that,
saying in terms of like the
that's what I mean, like,
hardline physical value.
Yeah, and I mean, okay, yeah, schmoozing is very valuable in every place, but it's like, what if the power goes out and you can't turn on the fucking computer? What does it matter if you were good at that IT job? Because the fucking power's out, which, a lot of places doesn't matter. But here in St. Croix, it makes a big fucking difference. This shit goes out all the time. It's like, yeah, but I see your point where it's like, yes, it's we're in our context, so this has more meaning to us. But still, it's like, on a cold night, fuck that. What is, I want my skills. I want my primitive skills. It's like I guess what I'm saying is that it has more permanent value because you can
Right.
make it from whatever you find. You don't need you don't need somebody else to turn the lights on. You don't need somebody else to make the computer. You don't need somebody else to like make the company that you work for. It's like, it's just there. It's like between you and the earth. And so long as you're on the earth, you're good. Like that skill isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Are we wrapping
And
this
then I
puppy?
guess we are wrapping this, and I'm going to wrap it on this, I guess, for me, is that what this conversation also hilariously always comes back to for most of us that I've had it with is that I just think it's fucking cool. Like, I think when I see an arrowhead, I'm like, it's fucking cool. Or when somebody tells me like how they learned this cool tracking thing or had like a tracking experience, I'm like, it's fucking cool. Or when I learned that an eagle has 4 focal points instead of 1 like we do, I'm like, it's fucking cool. Like, this shit has just always amazed me and provided me with like that awe, wonder, joy nexus of learning that I'm like, this shit's just cool. Like, yeah, it's hard. And yeah, sometimes it's like not the best way of doing things, or it's irrelevant, or it's like silly compared to a more efficient way. But it's like, I think it's fucking cool. And so it has value to me to learn to do it this way. And I've gotten good enough at it to help other people learn it in a way that's not shitty or painful. So like, or less shitty or painful than if you're doing it by yourself. It's like, that's kind of like the most realistic breakdown for me.
And well, and I know we already made this point, but I still think it bears repeating. Here I go being a hater again. But it's cool. And again, what I find is that for people who are saying it's not cool, they're only just saying it because they can't do it. Not saying it because it's not true. Like, it's pretty rare to find somebody who really is like, would look at an arrowhead and be like, that's actually not fucking cool. Like, like, who's going to say that? People don't say, oh, that's not cool. Right. What they say is, yeah, but what's the point? Right. It's they're saying, yeah. Right. They're saying, yes, it is cool. But then they're bringing in this other piece, which is basically about raising their status in the face of something that they can't do. And so, yeah, it's like, because it's of the earth and like one person or one small group of people, right? Because it's so simple, but complicated in its way, it carries more possibility for coolness. It's like, you don't need a ton of context for an arrowhead to be cool. In fact, most people don't need the arrowhead to be on an arrow and shot at an animal to be cool. Most people just make an earring or a necklace out of it and be like, that's really fucking cool. So it's cool and it has lasting value, right? It's like anybody who picks up an arrowhead, like if you found a discarded arrowhead that broke however many, hundreds or thousands of years ago, people are like, that is fucking cool, right? Other modern technological garbage has to be pretty fucking old before people are like, that's cool, right? Like, I don't give a shit about that beer bottle that just got tossed out unless it's 100-year-old beer bottle. Then it's kind of cool, right? So, yep. Anyway,
Word 'em up.
That was a pretty good. Yep. So yeah,
dude.
hopefully people keep subscribing and keep listening and all that stuff, and give us some more ideas for what we should talk about. I think at some point we'll get back to doing these things more regular. Have you been out
and
hunting
get some
a bunch?
guests.
Tell me you've been out.
I've been prepping spots and hunting a little. We've had a lot of rain the last couple of weeks, and I'll rain if it's drizzling, but if I can't count on any blood trail, then yeah.
Man,
but
we were talking.
I've got a week trip going birding with a buddy of mine on the Cape to get him. I'm just been promising I was going to get him into the migration for years, so I'm going to take him out to the Cape and sneak around and take some pictures of some birds, and then when I get back, it'll be the first 2 weeks of November is the last 2 weeks of bow season before the guns are in the woods, and I'm going to hunt a lot. I've already cleared it with the home office and made a lot of time. And then rifle season, I've decided I'm just going to put on a fuck ton of Blaze Orange and go scout some new properties that I got access to. Because I'll get right after the rut information, or post rut info on where the deer are at. And, it'll just be a good excuse to go walk around. And if I shoot one with a rifle too, then great.
Well, what do you have, a bow season after the rifle's done, or is that it? It's done after the end of rifle?
Yeah, there's a little bow season in the beginning of December that I'm going to get some spots around on the land here set up, and yeah, at some point
once
I'll
the animals are really freaked out.
Yeah, well, and I mean at some point too, Sarah will just be like, dude, fuck you.
There's not enough meat on the table for this shit. Get your ass back in the house. Scrub some diapers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks for listening,
all right,
everybody.
man. Till next time. Yeah.
Peace.